Welcome back. There are growing calls for President Cyril Ramaphosa to reshuffle his cabinet. Now, in the wake of last month's unrest, the security cluster has been criticized for not preventing the widespread looting, vandalism and killings. At some point, the cluster seemed clueless about who was supposed to. Should Ramaphosa act now and shake up his cabinet? Who's staying? Who's leaving? Let's discuss this with Mahlatse Mahlase, who is the group editor-in-chief at Eyewitness News, and Hajra Omarjee, who is a political editor at Business Day. Thank you, Hajra and Mahlatse, for joining me for this discussion. First of all, let's start with you, Hajra. I was reading your story on the front page of the Business Day today. You have spoken to people that are telling you that the cabinet reshuffle is actually not going to be this minister moving to here and that moving here. There's going to be a big change in President Cyril Ramaphosa's cabinet.
Yeah, and that came from the president himself. Let's not forget that this reshuffle is about 6 months delayed at this stage. Jackson Mthembu passed in January, and we would have expected the president to have applied his mind. But it's not just 6 months delayed. When Tito Mboweni came in as finance minister in 2018, it was supposed to be an interim appointment. It is years later, and he's yet to find a suitable replacement. I do think, though, that the civil unrest in the country in July has forced the president's hand, because literally those in the national executive are getting away with murder, and the president looks weak. 300 people died, thousands of businesses were razed to the ground, and the reaction from the state was to be caught napping. That is what the president said to the ANC NWC on Monday, which is why we expect the reshuffle to be imminent. However, the president likes process, so nothing's guaranteed until it's done.
Yeah, Mahlatse, process sometimes takes way too long and it costs us as a nation. What are we hearing about how the president is treating this with a matter of urgency?
Speaking to people that are close to him, they're all describing the pending reshuffle as a moving target, and I've heard so many of them repeating these words in the past few weeks. I think, as Hajra was saying, the failure of the security cluster has made and has put extra pressure on the president to actually exert and move and change his cabinet. I think what is apparent is that the president chose a cabinet that was a compromise of trying to appease the different warring factions in the ANC, and not necessarily a cabinet that was one that he felt could execute his vision. And I think all of us expected him that within 2 years at the most, we would then see that cabinet that expressed what he wants to see in government. And we haven't seen that. And now with what has happened with the security cluster, he is appearing weaker and weaker. We are hearing that it could be as early as tonight. Some people are saying that definitely before he appears at the State Capture Commission. And some people are saying he is a man of process. He is continuing with the consultations, also consulting with those he wants to fire. But because he is not speaking to us as the nation, and we are desperate to see action on those that fail and fail spectacularly, he is failing us also in the process. I think to have a key Ministry of Health with an acting minister is a failure on his part for so long, especially when there's overwhelming evidence against Zweli Mkhize. And we know that Tito remains a reluctant minister, and he says it as much. So when we are facing a crisis of the economy and a crisis of health, we want to see the people that he sees as the people that can execute his plan and vision. And I think every day that he's delaying, it's a day that he's appearing weaker and weaker. Yes, he's a man of the long game, but I think South Africans are desperate for action. Also because we have seen inaction in the past where quickly we move on, there's a new crisis to deal with, and then there's never any accountability.
Yeah, Hajra, health and economy, quite critical portfolios. The president needs people he can trust, people, as Mahlatse say, who can execute his plan and vision. What are we hearing about the people that the president may be considering to take up these positions on a permanent basis? I mean, does he even have options? I've seen some people suggest that maybe he needs to approach Joel Netshitenzhe and bring him back from retirement and bring him to finance, because as Mahlatse says, Tito Mboweni every day almost, even sometimes indirectly shows you how disinterested sometimes he is. What options does the president have?
Well, that's the president's big problem. He's been trying to find a replacement for Mboweni since 2018, and he's not found a suitable replacement. You mentioned Joel Netshitenzhe. There's also Enoch Bonogwana. There is Sputla Ramakgopa. There is the MEC of Education in Gauteng, as well as the MEC of Education in the Free State. There's Poppy Ramathuba, the MEC of Health in Limpopo. So that's been used as an excuse by the president to try to delay the reshuffle and to take his time in terms of process. The big problem that South Africa has, and this is now a problem that we saw manifest when we saw violent unrest, is that the president has not appointed an executive that is able or has the political will to implement his reform agenda on which he was elected ANC president and on which South Africans showed their confidence towards the ANC in the 2019 elections. If he was serious about that reform agenda, the party and helping factions and ensuring that factions are happy within the party would not be his priority. That's what he did in his first cabinet.
Yeah.
His priority should be the priority of Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, Jacob Zuma. Whether or not you agree with their agenda, they appointed a national executive that implemented that agenda. In his own words, South Africa faced the biggest political insurgency since 1994. 300 people died. And in his own words, his ministers were caught napping. He cannot continue to allow his ministers to literally get away with murder.
Yeah, Mahlatse, who is likely then to be out? Those that have failed to implement his reform agenda. What are we looking at? I mean, there's no way I think that Zweli Mkhize is coming back, but then this is politics. You never know what happens. What are you hearing about the people the president is looking at, not just moving to other ministries, but letting them go completely?
Yeah, I mean, what we are hearing is that it is an overhaul of cabinet that's on the cards. It is a remake of cabinet, as we are being told. And that suggests that, as somebody called it, the departure lounge is actually quite full. There's names of, for example, as you said, Zweli Mkhize definitely out. The finance minister has been touted as also out in the departure lounge. There's also Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, Ayanda Dlodlo. The one that's a question mark in that security cluster remains Bekicele, because we know that he has been quite a loyal lieutenant for him and helped to campaign for him in KwaZulu-Natal. Whether he will stay, we're not sure, but some are placing him in that departure lounge. We've also heard maybe Ibrahim Patel as somebody that could also be on his way out. I think the difficulty that the president might be having as well is that while some are saying that he wants to bring in a lot more younger people and probably people new to cabinet, he also has a short term to go towards the next 2022 elections, and whether they're able to come in and hit the ground running and then be able to showcase and to show what he's been able to achieve, that's also another issue. Because, Clement, we must not forget that we should have gone to an NGC, and that NGC is always going to be used as a checking point of how well he has performed. And we know that those that are against him in the ANC were planning to use that NGC to say that he has failed to execute his mandate from the Nasrec elective conference. So yes, he is looking at new younger faces, and there are all those people that are being touted from provinces, some of the younger, and also a key consideration to women. But the other thing that he has to balance it out with is if he brings in only the people that he wants and not necessarily massaging the factions of the ANC, will he also have enough to say to the ANC, I've executed the mandate you've given me?
Hajra, what are the political implications here? Mahlatse mentions Bekicele. I remember the work that he did in KwaZulu-Natal. He was one of the key players ahead of the 2017 Nasrec conference, working the ground in KwaZulu-Natal for President Cyril Ramaphosa to be elected president. I'm thinking about Tito Mboweni and how received he was by the market. So there are certain things. It's not just decisions you make, but you need to also think about the political implications afterwards. What implications are we looking at should the president move in any way?
Be it tonight, tomorrow, or next week, if the president comes out and fires Ayanda Dlodlo and Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula for the unrest, but keeps Bekicele as police minister, what signal is he sending to the ANC in terms of gender parity and gender empowerment? Let's not forget he faced a female candidate and he won by a very small margin when it came to the last election in the ANC in 2017. However, I've thought for some time now, having assessed the sympathy and support of former President Jacob Zuma supporters across all provinces, that there is no one that can successfully contest the president in next year's election. There is perhaps Zuma could have if he stood the third term in 2017. However, given that he is strong, the president needs to remember that when he walked into office, he took an oath to put the national interest before anything else, and that includes the party interest. If he reshuffles but does not go as far as removing his own allies, the likes of Aaron Motsoaledi, the likes of Angie Motshekga, the people who were part of his factional camp in the ANC in favor of young blood who could push his reform agenda, Panyaza Lesufi, for example, then we've got to start asking serious questions about whether or not the ANC is going to do as well in the next election. And I think Ramaphosa needs to remember, how is it that Thabo Mbeki got a 2/3 majority? The lives of South Africans improved significantly in the term before that. The life experience of South Africans, especially on the economy, the cost of living is strangling South Africans. We are being forced to pay for everything, including state capture. He himself has said, where there is political will, there is a way. Why has that same political will not been applied to the economy as it has been to COVID-19?
All right, Mahlatse Mahlase and Hajra Omarjee, thank you so much to both of you for your insights and sharing with us what you're hearing from within the ANC, from within government as well. The president, now the ball is in your court. We now wait to see what move he's going to make, whether tonight or tomorrow or in the days or months to come. Still to come here on